This is the Chopped Podcast, episode number 10. Yay! Hey everyone, I'm Marley of the blog Namely Marley. Thanks for joining me today. And today we're celebrating because this is the 10th episode of the Chopped Podcast. We're into double digits. Yay! Well, thank you so much for joining me. I'm so happy to have you here because this is the Chopped Podcast and it's dedicated to people just like you, bloggers who love food. Each week I'm sharing interviews, thoughts, and stories related to food blogging so we can all learn together what works with food blogging and a little bit about what doesn't. Can you tell I'm a little bit peppy today? I think that's because I got this new bouncy ball. It's my chair. It's a lot of fun to sit on and it makes me feel a little bit happy. But anyway, I wanted to tell you that today's guest is Ali Ebright of the site Give Me Some Oven. I'm so happy to have Ali on the podcast today. She's right here in Kansas City, so I've had the chance to meet her myself. And I can tell you from experience, she's more than just a pretty website. She's a great person too. So today, Ali and I are talking about something that I think is so important, the dangers of comparison. I think about comparison a lot because I think it's, Ali and I talk about this, it's something that happens a lot with food blogging. We end up comparing ourselves to others and it can hold us back in so many ways. Like, for example, you can think that your photographs are never going to look like so-and-so's or that person's, or maybe their recipes are done in such a great way, or maybe you even are just drooling over the different badges they have on their site and the design and, all that kind of stuff. So after a while, you really feel very stymied. And another way that I have found myself to be stymied is that I might look at some of their sites and think, why in the world would I want to do another smoothie recipe? Because I'll confess, for a while I was really into smoothies and it never actually made it to my site because I saw so many smoothie recipes out there and I would think to myself, it's not that original. Everybody's doing smoothie recipes. So why in the world do I want to do that? But Ali and I talk about that and I think she raises some really good points. So for example, this is my audience and my readers and the way that I'm approaching this may be completely different than somebody else, or maybe it's not completely different, but there's my story that's attached to the reason I'm making these smoothies and how they impact me and maybe a funny way I have of sharing, the last time I made smoothies, what happened while we made them. Maybe I forgot to put the lid on the blender. It wouldn't be the first time, let me tell you. And they splattered all over the place and I've got a great story that I tell about that. Or, just things like that I think are so important to remind ourselves that in this day and age, I don't know about you, but it's really tough to be original. And we all probably want that feeling of being original. And yet then when we start to compare ourselves and we see all these things going on, it's just, I don't know, it could get just kind of overwhelming, So Ali and I talk about that. She raises some good points, like, for example, why food bloggers are actually more susceptible than other careers when it comes to comparing ourselves to others. It's important to think about that. We also talk about the kind of metrics that bloggers can be, thinking about. She has some great tips for people who think their traffic is not big enough. Have you ever been in that situation where you think, oh, well, so-and-so has 6 million page views a month and I only have this many. I love Ali's point on this. It really has just changed the way I look at the size of my audience as compared to somebody else's. And I think you'll like it too. She has the best advice I've ever heard on the way to trick yourself out of the comparison game. The trick is to catch it early and then to take an action that Ali's prescribing. And I love what she's recommending. I hope you try it and you like it too. We also talk about Ali's favorite food. You won't believe it. It caught me by surprise. So one quick thing before the interview, I want to let you know that we've got some exciting things being planned for this year's Chopped Conference. I hope you'll mark your calendars for October 15th and the 16th and stay tuned because I'll have more information about tickets going on sale and lots of information. So if you're interested in just being the first one to know, you can subscribe to the ChoppedCon newsletter at choppedcon.com. I highly recommend it and I really would love for you to be there. It'd be great to see you. So let's get straight to the interview with Ali. Today's intro is in honor of Maria Mercurio of Maria's Pleasing Plates. Maria, thanks so much for that shout out on Instagram. Made my day. Okay, get out those earbuds and turn up the volume, and let's talk about all things food blogging and so much more. Hey everyone, I'm so excited to have Ali Ebright of the site Gimme Some Oven on the show today. Ali, welcome to the Chopped podcast.
Thank you so much. I'm excited to be here.
There's so much I want to talk with you about, Ali, and I'm so excited about it all. Your amazing food photography, your recipes, it's just so amazing. I also like the way you personalize your blog and tell the stories that you tell. But first, I want to get into how this all began. Can you tell me what it was that caused you to start the blog, Gimme Some Oven?
Oh my gosh. Well, first of all, you are so kind. Thank you for all those great words. I began the blog a little over, I guess it's about 5.5 years ago now. I initially began it not knowing what I was doing at all. I'm a very impulsive person, admittedly, and I was in a place in life where I was learning to cook and, was especially trying out a lot of my new recipes on friends at parties and such. And I just felt like the sort of thing kept happening where I would go to a party and bring an appetizer, and then, everybody would email afterwards and ask for the recipe or whatnot. And also at the time, excuse me, a lot of my friends did not really know how to cook. And so I was especially excited and, just eager to help them become more comfortable in the kitchen. So anyway, I kind of stumbled upon the idea of blogging and really did not read many food blogs at the time. Again, had no idea what I was doing. And my brother-in-law happened to be a designer, and I basically asked if he would set me up a WordPress site, and we did that in about a weekend. And then I purchased I started to try and create my first post, and I realized immediately that my little point and shoot camera, the banana bread that I was photographing, looked pretty terrible. And so actually, right before I began the blog, I swapped 2 of my old point and shoot cameras in on Craigslist and bought my first DSLR and invited a friend who is a photographer to come over and teach me how to use it for a couple of hours, and I made him cookies. And we snapped my first photo, and from there it just, I began blogging. But
so even though you hadn't really looked at a lot of other blogs, you knew that you wanted food photography to, your photographs to be really good.
Well, I think I just wanted them to be passable. I remember that literally I made, all of the rookie mistakes when I took my first photos. I did it at night. And I had
a flash.
Yeah, I had absolutely no idea what I was doing. And flash, the whole 9 yards. And it looks terrible. And I think I realized my first photos on the blog were nothing impressive at all, but I realized, this is definitely half of it. I can make amazing food, but if it doesn't look appetizing, nobody's going to want to make it. So I think, I kind of began from the very start realizing that this was something that I wanted to learn how to do well. And but it definitely took a few years, I would say, before I reached a place where I felt somewhat comfortable with food photography and styling and, just felt proud of it.
I think that's cool too, that you kind of got into this, you were discovering this passion you had for cooking, and then you were finding other friends that were maybe a step or two behind you on that, and you were like, come on, I want to show you how you can do this.
Yes. Oh my gosh, that's one of my favorite things on earth. I get maybe a little too excited about, whenever friends are interested in learning how to make something. One of my old roommates who lived with me at the time, she really didn't cook at all, but she loved guacamole. And she would always get very excited whenever I make guacamole. And so, one day I was like, oh my gosh, we should learn how to do this. And we had a big guac party. And then she started making it, 3 times a week after that. And I don't know, it's so silly. But I was so excited every time she made it because I knew that it was something that, we had done together. And
yeah. You were there together and you discovered it together in a way.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So
guacamole is one of those things, I always hated it when I was a kid. I mean, maybe it's just because it's green,
Yeah.
But once you try it and you fall in love with it, you're just hooked.
Oh my gosh, I could eat it every day. That and
Me
chips
too.
and salsa, I always say, are my happy place. Never get tired of them.
And they're so easy to make, and it's just, so fulfilling and happy, and it's all good stuff.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. But your food photography is so amazing. So you just had a friend that showed you a few things in a couple of hours, and from there you just grew?
Oh, well, he basically showed me I remember being completely overwhelmed. I had never even heard the words like aperture or
Yeah.
shutter speed or anything like that. And he basically showed me how to use the auto function, which was helpful, and
Mm-hmm.
how he kind of tried to explain, the trio of aperture and shutter speed and all of that jazz, but it totally went over my head. But yeah, I mean, I'd say I definitely learned just at least how to push, push the button on the camera to take the photos initially. And then over time, yeah, I don't know. I'm just a big fan. I feel like I've never learned very well from like manuals or
Yes.
stuff like that. And so I would just so much rather invite a friend over who knows how to do something and both of us like trade knowledge. And so, yeah, over the years, I definitely had a handful of photography friends who we would get together and yeah, I just really enjoyed being able to learn from them. And then now I enjoy being able to hopefully give that back. And I don't know, I feel like friends all around me are always getting new cameras, and I'm happy to come and try and give them my little 1 hour tutorial to help them out. So, yeah.
Well, and I think you've shared some food photography tips on your site, haven't you?
Yeah, I tried.
Yes.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it was kind of one of those things where I was writing these tutorials and I'm like, I'm hoping that this is helpful for some people to learn this way. But I think I'm definitely still much more of a hands-on learner. So
I am too. I
to
think they
each
call
their
that
own.
a kinesthetic kind of learner where you got to, get your hands involved and
Yes, yes,
yeah.
absolutely.
I am the same way, and I feel like I am also experiential in that I have to make 1,000 mistakes before I figure the one thing that's right.
Yep, I completely relate.
Yeah. So,
Yep.
what's your favorite part about food blogging?
Oh my goodness. You know, I It's funny. I feel like the recipe development is maybe at the bottom of the list for me. I really enjoy creating recipes, but I think so much more nowadays. I really do enjoy the food photography and styling. But I mean, without a doubt, my favorite part of it is, I don't know, just kind of the magic of the internet and this idea that, these recipes that I create in my kitchen will somehow appear on people's dinner tables and might be a part of, some moments that they share together with family or friends or whatever that may be. And I don't know, it still just completely blows my mind whenever, somebody writes in and says, hey, we made your recipe for breakfast, or hey, I took these cookies to my mom, or like, I just think that's amazing.
I
So
I
that's my
completely
favorite part.
agree. Yeah, it's an amazing feeling. And also like I don't know if you notice this too, but it seems to me like there are some people who have a negative perception of food bloggers. Like I've actually read posts from people who say they feel bad about saying in a group like what do you do for a living, and their answer is, oh, I'm a food blogger. And I think food bloggers play this hugely important role in people's lives because they're helping people learn to cook from home and to do more things, food at home is so important.
Yes. Oh my gosh. I mean, that's it. I just think it's the coolest thing. And I think
Yeah.
that I love that there are hundreds and thousands of food bloggers out there now doing that. That, like,
Yeah.
I mean, everybody has a chocolate chip cookie recipe. And, I know that some food bloggers might be afraid to post like yet another one online,
Hmm.
but that's one of those things where I just think it's so cool that we have thousands of takes on these favorite foods. And, you can go to the internet and not only find different recipes that might fit what you're looking for, but be able to hear the stories behind them. I just think the more the merrier on the internet when it comes to food bloggers.
Exactly. I completely agree. So I also love how about your site that you've tried so many different things. Like, you don't seem like you have. I don't know how to say this the right way, but like you don't seem to have a fear about putting yourself out there and trying different things. Like you'll talk about you've had different blogs, like Give Me Some Oven, and you branched that out to have multiple blogs on the same top, different topics but different same theme.
Yeah.
And different writers and all these things. I just think that's impressive. I'm sure that must be hard to do as well.
Oh, thank you. I think yeah, I'm definitely, for better and worse, that blogger who just kind of tries things. And maybe I should think things through a little bit more before I do them. But yeah, like we've tried a handful of things. I think I reached a point about, I don't know, I think it was 2.5 or 3 or so years into the blog where, again, like I love food, but I was just kind of feeling a little bit stifled, or I don't know. I just feel like there are so many other things in life that I'm passionate about as well. And so, yeah, I kind of made the decision to bring on a few different contributors and try like super expanding the blog to having 5 different topics, including food. And we tried that for about 1.5 years. And then I realized like, almost from a time management or a business perspective, it was just so much to keep track of. And it was turning me into a workaholic. And I didn't really want to spend that sort of time on work. And so anyway, we've kind of, tweaked things and pulled a few things back. And now we have the site to where there's 3 main categories instead of 5. And I don't know, I feel really good about it right now. But at the same time, I'm probably going to get restless and change something else up in the next few years. But as long as my readers don't get too annoyed with me for experimenting, hopefully it'll be fun.
Well, I read that book, The Confidence Code. I don't know if you've read that, but they talk in there. It's a book about, and I won't be able to think of the name of the authors right now, but I'll leave the link in the show notes page for anybody who's interested. But it's actually written about women and how women can build confidence in their lives. And one of the things they talked about is like a lot of women are so afraid of failure that they don't take these little risks or take opportunities that come along in their life. So I think it's great that you do these kinds of things.
Thanks. I just feel like that's where you learn in life. Like I'm just kind of a let's try it and see sort of person in a lot of areas. So
So you've had so many of your recipes go viral. It's so impressive. I love that. When I go onto Pinterest, I can go, yep, that's Ali's recipe right there. I can just tell.
Yay!
Yeah. Do you feel like you've got some formula? Like you're ever shooting something and you're like, I know this has really got a good chance of making that viral leap.
Man. Yes and no. Like I would say no in some ways because, of course, as we all know, the internet is very unpredictable.
Yeah.
And I think Pinterest especially is super unpredictable. You never quite know what's going to take off. But at the same time, I think I've also learned, like I have 1,000+ recipes on my site. And I, to some degree nowadays can kind of predict what will do well. I think without a doubt on my site, at least, anything with chicken, anything in a slow cooker, anything Mexican or like comfort foodie, those tend to be, I don't know, pretty consistent performers in terms of traffic. But I don't know. At the same time, I kind of try and keep, a good mix of some recipes that I think will like necessarily do better on Pinterest, but then also like throwing in a few weird ones that maybe I just like, or a little healthier than some people might like, or whatever it may be. Like, for example, mushrooms. I feel like I heard somewhere that 50% of the world likes mushrooms, and I love them. But I'm super aware of the fact that, if I put mushroom in the title of a recipe, 50% of people probably won't click on it. So I don't know. That said, I try and kind of, throw in my mushroom recipes every now and then, even though I know that the world may not be a fan.
So you're in the mushroom fan club.
Yes, I am, proudly. Deliciously.
So you've mentioned before that you put some thought into something that I think can be a big, huge roadblock for a lot of food bloggers, and that's the topic of comparing ourselves to others. It can be a real negative thing for a lot of us. I mean, it'd be one thing if we were comparing ourselves and it was helping to move us forward, but a lot of times when we fall into that trap of comparing ourselves to others, it turns into this thing of like shutting ourselves down.
Yeah.
So what are your favorite tips for helping people to overcome that?
Oh my goodness. Yeah, I feel like whenever bloggers get together and talk, whenever people get together and talk, I think comparison is such a natural thing that humans who are aware of one another experience. But I feel like it's definitely the thing that I hear most with other bloggers. And I think, I don't know, I always want people to have compassion with themselves because I feel like in some ways the blogging world, it's a weird little world. Like, in what other industry do you sit there? I feel like most bloggers that I know, we kind of scan the web probably at least multiple times a day. Like, I'm looking at other people's posts, I'm looking at Pinterest or whatever. Like, I very literally have, quote unquote, my competition in front of my face every day. And, there's another degree of that, and that so many bloggers are friends. And like, we have these relationships, and sometimes, it might be competitive. Like, maybe you are going after a similar contract together or something. But, I feel very aware of the fact that all day long I'm looking at people who are doing what I'm doing. And I think in most industries, like, you're not necessarily looking at other people who are doing exactly what you're doing all day. And so it seems like a very natural thing to like compare different things, like compare different recipes, compare people's photography, comparing ideas or writing or relationships or whatever it may be. Like, I think it's a natural thing, but like you said, I think it's when it becomes something that's, more discouraging or I don't know, if it gets you down, then it's not helpful.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I feel like over the years, like I've just really learned, I think in one way, like to remind myself that any other blogger's success is great for the industry. Like if somebody else has a recipe that goes viral, or if they get some amazing contract or whatever it may be, that's so good for blogging. And even in a roundabout way, that will someday, that influences my career as well. And so I don't know. I feel like I was at a conference a few months ago when two writers who I really loved were talking about comparison, and they were talking about kind of strategies, like what happens when all of a sudden you like get in that little jealousy mode or whatever that, occasionally we all find ourselves in. And one of them said that her strategy instantly was to share. She's like, whenever I find something that somebody else has written or done that's amazing, she's like, instead of like getting in my own little world and getting worked up about it, she's like, I share it. And then it's win-win. She said the rest, like more of my friends get to see it. Like all of a sudden there's something about that just lifts, the yuckiness out of my head. And I realized, this is somebody's work that's good. And like, let's share it and celebrate it. And somehow it just kind of turns those icky jealousy feelings, I don't know, upside down. And so
what a great idea. That just really reframes that whole thing.
Yeah, which as bloggers is great because we're sharing things all day long on Pinterest or Facebook or whatnot, or even take it a step further. And I don't know, I've tried to get a lot better about being able to tell people, like even just write a 3-sentence email. If I see a post that's really beautiful or really well done, or leave a comment or something, but just say, hey, I noticed like you worked really hard on that one and it was really, really good. And, there's just something about taking it out of that headspace and into something more positive and affirming that, I don't know, I think it just kicks comparison in the butt, which is great.
How seldom do we, for me personally, like how often I go out and I see sites like that or a post like that I think, wow, that was tremendous. But how seldom I actually go and would send them an email and tell them that. That's a great idea. I love it.
Yeah, well, and I don't know, it helps. And again, it's like win-win for everybody. You feel better, you get out of that funk in your brain, and that person hopefully feels encouraged. And I don't know, I've really taken that one to heart. The author, by the way, was Glennon Martin, excuse me, from Monastery. I don't know if you've seen that blog. She's amazing.
I haven't. What is the site again?
It's called Monastery, Momastery. She's amazing. I'm not even a mom, and I'm obsessed with her blog. I just feel like she's one of those girls who gets vulnerability and does it really well and in a hilarious way.
Well, that's interesting that you mentioned vulnerability, because I think it almost feels like the comparison game and vulnerability are at odds with each other. Like, it's important to be vulnerable to be able to be authentic, and yet at the same time we start comparing ourselves to others. It's like almost a way of shutting that down. Yeah.
Oh man, I am just by the day a growing fan of vulnerability in a healthy way online.
Right.
Yeah. Well, that's it. Whenever somebody opens up, like you instantly don't compare, you don't judge, like you can't argue with somebody's story. And I don't know, I'm always just so in awe of people who stick their necks out there and share something personal that I just I just want to clap and cheer them on.
Yeah, I totally agree. But it's interesting because it seems like when I was talking with Bev on the topic of authenticity, one of the tips to really learn your own authentic voice was to actually go out and look at other sites and see which ones you really connect with and ones that you don't, and that's how you can kind of learn about what's authentic for you. So it's like a double-edged sword in some ways. On the flip side of authenticity, searching would be that you would start comparing yourself, like, oh, I'm never going to be as good as that person.
But then at the same time, but I feel like that's like the good side of comparison. I feel like I've learned my craft, thanks to comparison, like by looking at other people's ideas, looking at how they write, looking at how they photograph. Like when we use it for good, it can be such a great teacher. But yeah, I fully support that. I feel like I've learned so much. Like even, this is kind of silly, but I did this, that site, it's called The Every Girl. They had a 30-day challenge called 30 Days of Motivated Mornings. And long story short, the challenge was to wake up for 30 minutes in the morning and do something that totally inspired you. And it took me a few days to kind of like figure out what actually inspired me, which waking up and working out in the morning does not inspire me. I figured that out quickly. But one of the things that I found is I I don't know, I just created on my blog reader, I created a category that for some reason in 5 years of blogging, I never really had this. I created a category that was just called fun, like blogs that I read that are purely for fun, that are inspiring or whatnot. And I look forward to opening that baby up. Like, I don't do it every morning, but almost every morning. I just look at some of these blogs that totally resonate with me. And I feel like even just from those handful of blogs alone, I've come so far in like finding my voice or finding different things to talk about that I don't know. I just feel like I've become a much better blogger by reading people's work who, I don't know, just really inspires me and that I really respect.
Well, that's a great idea. Are there other tips that you would give to somebody? Like, let's imagine there's somebody out there that is just stuck and feeling down about themselves because they've been comparing themselves to other people so much and they feel like they're never going to get ahead or be what they want to be. Do you have any favorite tips for someone like that?
Yes, tell your story. Because I feel like one of the things, like, your story is always going to be different than somebody else's. And it's kind of like you can't really compare stories or lives. Like, you can compare photography, you can compare recipes or whatnot, but the second that you start telling your story about something, like, again, even if it's chocolate chip cookies, it's like, hey, we made these last night and we had Mumford on in the background and we had a dance party and then we sat around and talked about relationships or, you know, whatever it may be, which that was my story last week. You know, like, it instantly, there's something about that. Again, it's kind of that little magic of vulnerability that once you make things personal, I don't know, it just seems like comparison takes a backseat.
But you also have to have a little bit of belief in yourself too, don't you? Like, I mean, I could see where someone might say, my story's not that interesting. Like, it seems like every blogger's either 20 or they've got like kids that they're writing about, and I don't have any of those things or whatever. And I think that's a lack of belief in yourself.
Oh yeah. And that breaks my heart. But I mean, I know that's true. And I think that at the same time about my life. I'm like, oh, this or that's not as exciting or as cool. But you know what? Like, that's your life. And it's yours and it's unique and it's awesome. And without a doubt, somebody, probably many people, would love to hear about that and will relate. Like, not everybody is in their 20s and super hipster and whatever. I want to be able to write to people who are in my situation as well. And again, like, even with other blogs, I feel like some of my favorite blogs to read are of people who are in life situations that are very different than mine. And like, for example, one of my favorite bloggers to read is Kelly of Mountain Mama Cooks. Like, she lives in the mountains. I hate snow. She loves snow. She has 2 little boys. I don't have any kids or anything in my life, but like, listening to her talk about parenting or skiing or whatever it may be, like, she lives this life that's very different than mine. And I love living vicariously through her and just like learning different things about how she sees the world than I do. And yeah, I mean, there are tons of bloggers like that. So yeah, be you, be you, be you.
That's right. And that is a great way. I also feel like I think it was Grace Bonney on her podcast. What was the name of her podcast?
Oh, After the Jump.
After the Jump, right.
Yes.
She said something that really impacted me, which is you're not trying to reach everybody. The whole world is not going to be your audience. So quit trying to reach everybody and just write to the people who, write for yourself and the people who are like you are going to be attracted to your site.
Absolutely. And that's how life is. Like, we don't go around trying to be friends with a million people. Like, you find the people who you connect with and then, it's natural.
Right.
But yeah, I feel like one of the things that concerns me every now and then in the blogosphere is I see, and it's a natural thing that happens, but I see people, pinpointing somebody who's had a massive amount of success and then, trying to become like them or like trying to write like them or photograph like them or whatever it may be. And again, like we talked about earlier, sometimes that can be like a source of inspiration and can kind of help you find your voice. But I feel like it's also sometimes easy to just kind of see somebody's style as a magic bullet or something. And if I, just become exactly like them, then I'll have the same success as them. And I don't know, that just makes me sad. And I just want to tell people, like, keep learning, keep doing your best, but be 100% you, and then you'll be different. And yeah, the world needs that.
Yeah, the world needs everybody to be themselves, really, and to get out there and put their voice out there. And you never know who you're going to impact as a result.
Oh, that's so true. Yeah. for
Yeah.
sure.
And so I think a lot of times, we're talking about kind of these, I don't know, like theoretical ways that people compare themselves. But then there are also, like you had mentioned, there are some stats that are involved as well. Some people will hear so-and-so got so many page views, or, someone else gets millions of hits a month or whatever. So I know that people can also compare themselves by stats as well.
Oh, yeah.
So the comparison I have is, like, I used to be a really bad runner. I used to like to run, but I had a friend who was a really, really good runner. And so I would run with her when she was sick or injured or whatever.
Yeah.
But she talked to me about the runner lingo, and they have something called a PR, which is your personal record.
Uh-huh.
So I was thinking, like, wouldn't it be cool if we could have something like that in blogging, where it's, when I would go out and run, I wasn't trying to be the winner of the race because I knew I couldn't beat my friend Connie. She was too good. But I could go out and try to beat my own personal record. And that, to me, seems like a real positive way of looking at it.
Oh, I love that. And I hope that more people can take that to heart. And I feel like stats are such a difficult thing for bloggers because on one hand, we absolutely can't ignore them. Like, they have a direct correlation usually to what we earn or how our blog is growing or whatnot. Like, they're important to acknowledge personally, not comparing them with other people. But I don't know, one of my favorite things, because I feel like I've heard from a handful of bloggers who are starting out and, they can get really discouraged when they have 300 people looking at their blog a month and somebody else they know has 3 million or something.
Right.
And I don't know, one of the things, even in my own head, if I ever start to get comparison-y about numbers, is this is super silly as well. But I think about, like, okay, say that you have 300 people coming to your blog that month. Picture a room with 300 people in it and you getting to stand up there and read your recipes. And that's a lot of people.
That is.
300 people is a room full. That's like a huge party, a big wedding, whatever it may be. And that these people are actually listening to the words that you're saying. And maybe even more, they're going to run home and make whatever recipe it is that you've shared. And then, like, imagine that with 30,000 or 300,000. Like, it is unfathomable to me that this magnitude of people will be tuning in and listening to what you have to say. And I don't know, I think sometimes numbers can just become numbers on a page, but when I try and find different ways to think about those people as real people, it's just mind-blowing. And I feel like it reframes the whole gratitude thing in my mind. And anytime that I'm like, that's not enough, I'm like, no, that's so many people, and you are so lucky, and be grateful for every single one of those people.
Wow, Ali, that is really good. That's powerful, because I never even thought about it that way. Rather than thinking, like, why don't I have, so and so has 6 million page views a month, why don't I have that? Rather than saying that, why not say, like you say, there are 300 people in a room why not just serve those 300 people as the greatest way that you can?
Yes. And I think that's the goal of it. I was actually talking with a friend when we were down at South by Southwest a couple weeks ago. She listened to this director who apparently just changed her life, but she was talking about how whenever she gets in a rut with filmmaking or whatever, she always goes back to this idea of serving the story. She's like, instead of making it about fame or being like, the most artistic director, having whatever, all the different metrics. She's like, whenever I get in that space, I just go back to this idea of I want to serve the story. And I felt like that resonated for me so much as a food blogger, just saying, okay, instead of like building my traffic or, building social media numbers or developing some sort of reputation, I'm like, at the end of the day, if I do nothing else, I want to have the approach that I really want to serve my readers well. And again, that's one of those kind of reframing things for me, that when I get in a bad place, I'm kind of like, oh yeah, I can do that. I love to serve people. And so, I don't know. For me, that helps a lot.
Do you think it helps if a blogger has their story, though? In other words, like if my goal is to serve the story, which is serving your audience, does it help to know what that story is?
Oh, I think for sure. Yeah, well, and I think it also helps to know your readers too, and what it is that they're looking for. And and I mean, there are so many ways to do that. And also, I mean, just very practically kind of monitoring comments and hearing what people are looking for, and getting to know your readers. I'm also a big fan of the old reader survey. I do that annually on my blog, and I feel like it's the best thing ever. I mean, sometimes it's, you get positive and negative feedback, and I actually really appreciate the negative feedback when people can give some constructive ideas. But On the other hand, I feel like it's such an invaluable way for bloggers to hear directly from their readers and a bunch of them all at once because I don't know, I feel like with food blogs especially, most of your commenters are other bloggers and sometimes I'm like, where are the readers? And it's so helpful just to like hear, oh yeah, this is what they're looking for, or these sort of recipes really help them out here, or oh, they need more meal planning, or whatever it may be. So yeah, long answer to say, yeah, serve your readers, figure out what it is that they're looking for and do your best to offer your best to them.
Because otherwise you're up there on that stage in front of those 300 people just rambling on and, you know.
Right. Exactly.
It's good to get some feedback to find out, oh, they want to know about this. I'll go in that direction.
Yes, it's huge.
What are some metrics that you think bloggers should be tracking to help them, you know, with their progress?
For me, it's way more internal than external. I mean, I feel like you can always be tracking traffic and things like that to see how you're doing. But I don't know. For me, it's always at the end of the day, like, do you feel like you're being authentic to who you are? Do you feel like the content that you're delivering is helping other people? And I don't know, just making sure that you're always, I think for me, the times when I kind of have a red flag go up is when I realize that I'm in different sorts of ruts, or maybe it's like a photography rut or a writing rut, or if I get uninspired, usually for me that means that it's time to start learning things again or like being really proactive about learning things, like trying to learn how to do something new on my camera, or, you know, do some writing exercises or bring in some feedback from friends to, I don't know, encourage me to write in a different way or talk about some different things, or so yeah, I don't know. For me, I feel like one of my biggest metrics is like, am I learning right now? And the times when I get too busy or uninspired or something, I tend to just kind of go on autopilot and keep doing what I do. And so yeah, that's something for me personally. That's
really good. I love that metric because it is a little bit less, you know, focused on a certain statistic as it is about, you know, what's your intuition about how things are going.
Yeah.
Following that gut, I guess, is the way you could say that.
Yes, gotta love the gut.
Yeah, exactly. One of my favorite writers is Julia Cameron with the Artist's Way series. Yeah, and she talks about making sure you go to fill up the well, and it sounds like what you're talking about, that morning exercise and finding some things that help you keep your well filled of creative ideas.
Yes. And I think for me, something that's really important to me is making sure that I have friends who are not bloggers weigh in on not only my blog, but me as a blogger. Like, is my life balanced, guys? Am I working way too much? Am I talking about blogging way too much? But then also have them read it and just kind of hear some of their honest thoughts, because I feel like a lot of times in the blogging community, bloggers tend to evaluate themselves, you know, either by comparing themselves to other bloggers or talking to other bloggers. And the reality is, like, only a teeny tiny % of my traffic is other bloggers. Most of the people who come to my site are readers. They're not bloggers. They're more like, you know, my friends. They're not reading 50 different blogs each day. They read a few, and I don't know. I feel like my friends are a huge help in 100 ways, but especially as a blogger, and just making sure that I'm in a healthy and inspired place and not getting into a workaholic or, I don't know, discouraged or whatever sort of place.
I have a great story to illustrate that point, and that is, I had a friend last year that said, you know, how do I subscribe to your blog? And I said, well, you know, there's the RSS feed, or I just assumed that everybody would do that. And her point was she didn't have RSS and she wasn't going to get it, and she wanted a newsletter. And at that point, I didn't even have a newsletter on the site. I just couldn't believe that I didn't have a way. I mean, it was like blog 101, and I didn't have it.
Interesting.
So it was kind of a great,
that's awesome.
Yeah, so I think it's a great idea to have non-blogging friends, you know, look at your site and give you some feedback. It's really helpful.
Oh yeah, like my sister got on my case actually, because I realized I post a lot of chicken recipes, and with many of my recipes, a lot of times I'll use rotisserie or just like some pre-cooked shredded chicken, and I was listing that in the ingredients. It's like, oh yeah, I use, you know, cooked shredded chicken. And I just assumed everybody knew that meant go grab a rotisserie or like grab something out of your freezer or something. And she finally called me one day. She's like, this is your 5th recipe that you call for cooked chicken. She's like, this may be super obvious, but can you tell me how you cook chicken? And I was like, oh, I should totally offer that. I don't know. Just some of those little things that definitely are important.
Yeah, I mean, that is a very good point. Like, I had somebody, I called for cooked quinoa on a recipe, and they said the same thing. Like, can you tell me how to cook quinoa?
Yeah.
Like, oh,
Yes, I
okay, I should.
can.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But that's the kind of feedback that you can get from a survey, or you can get from your readers, or from people who, that I think what I'm hearing you say is you need to be like, you're constantly learning, but constantly getting feedback from people.
Yeah. Oh man. I feel like that's one of the most important things we can do in life. And it's
Yeah.
like I feel like initially some bloggers might be a little afraid of hearing some of the negative
Yeah.
feedback, or I don't know. I feel like I see a lot of things, even people posting on Facebook or something about comments that they get that are unfriendly. And we all get those. Like, it's totally, in my mind, part of it. We put stuff out online, we invite comments, you're going to get some snarky ones. And, sometimes those can really rattle bloggers. And, and if it is something that you need to learn from, great. But I don't know. On the other hand, like, I'm just a big fan of like taking the constructive feedback wherever you can find it, even if it's unconstructive.
Right.
Just try and learn something from it all. But the more feedback, the merrier.
Okay, so let's change the theme a little bit here.
Okay.
What's your favorite social media platform right now?
Ooh, Instagram. I'm kind of that blogger who probably shouldn't admit this, but I really don't like social media. Most of it I don't enjoy. I do not like Twitter. I'm not a huge Facebooker. But Instagram, I feel like, is one where, at least hopefully for another year or two, I'm not I'm not tired of it yet. I just feel like it's so
What's
fun.
different?
I don't know. I feel like it's just so fun to see people's artistry. It's kind of like I enjoy reading articles and text statuses and such, but it's fun to just see friends take photos. And I feel like it's the one social media where you can just scroll through really quickly and learn a lot about people in a short amount of time.
Yes.
But
I really love it when people will share, like, they'll actually show a picture of their setup for their food photography, or just, their desk or whatever. I love that stuff.
Everybody wants to snoop behind the scenes.
Yes.
What about you? What's your favorite one?
Oh, wow. What's my favorite social media site? Wow, nobody's ever asked me that question. I have to think. I have to be honest. I have on this show actually said how much I don't like Twitter, but right now, it seems like every time I go on there, I'm getting feedback and responses and comments. And so right now, I'm really kind of digging Twitter. It's kind of funny.
That's awesome.
Yeah. But I'm just trying to be different. I like Instagram as well. It's just, there's something challenging and intriguing about Instagram because it's like being authentic, right?
Yeah, totally.
You have to find a way to be authentic and be yourself on Instagram. And I love that. That's really great.
I know. I'm way behind the times, but I just downloaded Snapchat last week. I feel like
I have that too.
Yeah, I feel like it's that stage at the very beginning of a new form of social media where you're like, oh my gosh, I have nothing to post, or I don't know what I have to say that could be cool enough for Snapchat. And then I'm like, this is how all of them began. So like, if I've learned anything from social media, just get going, which I need to get going. But I just haven't done it yet.
I'll follow you on Snapchat because I'm on that as well. But I really do not get that platform. But I'm open to finding out more about it.
They say it's the wave of the future.
They do. And my daughter got me on it. So she and I will share Snapchats back and forth.
That's awesome. Have her teach you, and then you can teach us.
Oh, yeah. Well, her way of saying, here's how you do it is just like, oh, just post a picture.
Right. It's that easy.
Yeah. But that one it's a little bit challenging because I don't know, like, it just goes away.
Right. Well, I think after 24 hours, oh my gosh, I'm sure all the high schoolers are rolling their eyes at us. You don't know how to use Snapchat.
I know. We better change the subject. We're going to sound uncool here in a minute. So I just am curious if there's people listening right now that let's say they also like Instagram, but what are your favorite tips for using Instagram?
Oh man, I feel like I'm probably not the best Instagrammer. Lately, I've just kind of been lazy and I've just been posting a lot of photos from my website, which I guess is not what you're supposed to do on Instagram. But I think the biggest tip that I've always heard is to be consistent and to kind of look at your profile page and make sure that your photos, to some degree look cohesive, like whether that's in camera angles or, kind of the coloring or the theme. So yeah, just kind of thinking about, instead of just thinking about photo, thinking about how all of your photos look together when somebody stumbles upon your feed. But I don't know, with Instagram, I think The other thing I'm trying personally to work on is being more interactive on Instagram. Sometimes I'll just, let a post or two go by where generous people come by and comment and then I don't respond. And I would like to be somebody who responds more and makes Instagram a little more of an actual social media where people have conversations and such. But it can be hard to keep up on, but I don't know.
Yeah.
I enjoy it.
When you start getting a lot of comments, it can be, like you say, hard to follow up.
Yeah. Well, and I need to use more. Who was it? Somebody the other day was talking about using Statagram to keep better track of comments and such, because the actual app, once there's whatever it is, 25 or 50 people who comment or like something, it goes below the fold and you can miss stuff. I think the other thing that I've really enjoyed personally is I have been trying to encourage readers to do more hashtagging whenever they make my recipes and to just hashtag give me some oven. And I have the biggest goofy grin on my face whenever I look through the page of the Give Me Some Oven hashtag. I'm like, there's all these people. There's photo proof that they're actually making these recipes. And oh my goodness, I completely recommend that. If a blogger doesn't have a hashtag for their site, make one and encourage your readers to use it, because it is super encouraging. Any day that I'm kind of like, oh my gosh, nobody likes my food, get on there and people actually do like it, and it's good to see.
So do you just, at the end of your post, you say, share your photo of your recipe at Give Me Some Oven?
Yeah, I actually had my web designer, Lindsay from Per Design, I had her just code it into my actual little recipe code thing. Yeah. So on all of my posts now, it automatically says, hey, if you make this, be sure and Instagram and, tag this hashtag. And yeah, there's a lot of photos on there now of people making my recipes.
Wow,
which is
that's great.
fun. Yeah.
And it creates some great interaction between you and your readers. That's wonderful.
Yes.
Okay, Ali, what's coming up next for you? Anything you can share?
Oh man, I'm working on a handful of projects right now. Honestly, I think I kind of hit a place like a year ago where I'm really enjoying kind of where I am right now with blogging and just kind of the day in and day out of creating recipes and photographing and sharing and all of that jazz. And I just kind of hit a point where I had all of these ideas for various other enormous projects that I could tackle, but right now I'm kind of trying to embrace the idea of enough for me.
And balance is a good thing too.
Yeah, and it's like, just because I have all of these ideas does not mean that I have to go chasing after them or that I even have the time. So yeah, there are a few small things. I'm working on developing some stuff right now, especially around the idea of cooking for one. Being single, which I'm pretty excited about. But yeah, for the most part, I'm trying to actually, and I may totally change this in 6 months, but for now, kind of keeping things a little bit simple and enjoying life, enjoying summer in Kansas City, and trying not to work, a ridiculous amount of time. But yeah, I'd say the things that I'm working on developing right now are more resources for readers and for other bloggers, and especially around the idea of cooking for one, just being able to help people do that in a way that is affirming and celebratory and not wah-wah and not wasting food.
And that actually is a topic that's important for more than, even married couples. I just talked with somebody recently who her husband is all of a sudden 60% travel and she's finding herself home alone a lot. So, she talked about going out to eat all of a sudden, and she hadn't been doing that before because she didn't want to cook for herself.
Yeah, there are so many people, as I've been working on some of this stuff, and just sharing it with friends, one of my best friends, her husband, works different hours and is usually not home for dinner, or, somebody in the family who has a totally different diet than they do and they cook differently. And it's not just single people, but it's a subject that I'm finding I'm increasingly passionate about. And so, I want to try and develop some resources to make it, encourage people.
So here we are at the end of the interview, and I've got just a couple of fun questions to share with you.
Okay.
What is the one food item you can't live without?
Egg drop soup.
Really? Wow. You really like that, huh?
Oh my gosh, I love egg drop soup. So probably the item that makes it is sesame oil. I think it is one of the best smells in my kitchen. I love sesame oil.
Just any sesame oil, or there's the toasted or the regular?
Toasted. Yeah, toasted.
For sure. And so do you always get that when you go out to a Chinese restaurant?
Always. It's like my barometer. I'd say that's my barometer for any sort of like Asian restaurant. They have to have really good egg drop soup. And then for Mexican restaurants, it's chips and salsa. I feel like both of those are pretty telling. Like if you can start the meal well with those, you're in good hands.
So for an Italian restaurant, it's the bread, right? And so Mexican.
Oh my gosh. Yes. Yum.
I've gone, like there's a Mexican restaurant that people just rave about it, but I think like their chips taste like cardboard. I don't even get it.
See, it's a problem.
Yes.
Like very, very important that restaurants focus on these things.
Yes, they have to have the perfect chips.
Yes.
And the perfect egg drop soup.
Yes, please. Oh my gosh. Year round, in the middle of July, I will enjoy egg drop soup once or twice a week. I'm obsessed.
But I'm sure you make your own at home too, right?
I do. And it's actually, it's so easy. People have no idea, but I do have a recipe for it on my site that I highly recommend.
I'll leave a link in the show notes page to it. What's your favorite app on your phone?
Oh my goodness. Oh, that's a really good question. Okay, probably honestly right now, I just downloaded Scramble, that game. I feel like I haven't had a game on my phone for like a year. I used to be into Words with Friends and then I got over that. But I downloaded Scramble upon the urging of a few of my book club friends a week or so ago, and I'm kind of obsessed. We'll see how long it lasts.
Is that the one where it scrambles the words and you try to make as many words as you can out of it? Yes,
it's kind of like Boggle.
I love that game.
Fun. Yeah, I'm playing way too much Scramble right now.
Well, I imagine it's like good for your brain, right?
It is. Well, and it's kind of the perfect, here's my thought. I feel like it's the perfect like 2-minute intense, like you really do it and then you can set it down and come back to it a day later. But it's just really fun and short, intense doses.
Yes, and then once you lose, then you can go on and do something else, right?
Yep, exactly.
Because it will keep you going, but eventually you're gonna, you can't win every game, so then the game's over.
Oh my gosh, my friends are so good. I thought that I was decent, but I think that's why I'm obsessed right now. I'm working very hard to see if I can get up to their level.
Oh, is that a comparison thing?
Maybe just a little bit.
See, that's where comparison can become kind of good for you, right?
Oh man, it's motivating.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh my gosh, how do you do this? I need to get better at Scramble.
So here you are studying the dictionary, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you have any time for TV at all? And if so, what's your favorite shows?
Oh my goodness. Yes, I actually love TV. I'd say The Good Wife is my favorite right now. I'm obsessed with. I just caught up on it. I've binge watched it like the last 2 months and I finally just got caught up. But yeah, I love that show. I love Alicia Florrick, the main character. I also started watching The Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt this week.
That's on my list.
It's on Netflix. It's super fun. I decided I like it in like 2-episode doses. I can't binge watch it. It's a little much for binge watching. But yeah, I completely love that. But yeah, I also watch just a lot of like Daily Show sort of stuff while I'm cooking.
Like The Daily Show or?
Yeah, The Daily Show. Yeah.
I love that show. Oh my gosh. So hilarious.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, Jon Stewart is probably my best sous chef. He's with me almost every day.
I'm sorry to hear that he's leaving. I don't know.
I know.
But, oh well. Okay, so waffle fries or French fries?
Ooh, I'd say, I don't know, probably waffle. Yeah, I like waffle. They're just so fun.
It's crispier, right?
Yeah, and I think everybody likes to say the word waffle.
You're right. There's something fun about that word.
It is. It's a happy word.
Okay, Ali, how can people find you online?
Gimme Some Oven, GIMME, someoven.com. But yeah, I'm on social media, Facebook, Pinterest, Twitter, the works. And yeah, if they stop by, say hi.
That's great. Ali, thanks so much for taking time to be with me on the show today.
Oh my goodness, you were wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much to Ali Ebright for being my guest on today's episode of the Chopped Podcast. I hope you found something inspiring from today's show. If you did, just head on over to choppedcon.com where I put up links for each show, including the stuff we talked about today and more information about our guests. If you like the Chopped Podcast, I'd love it if you'd leave a review on iTunes. It helps the show get discovered by more people. Also, you can spread the word about the Chopped Podcast using @ChoppedCon on Twitter or Instagram or even Facebook. You inspire me, so I hope today's show is helpful and inspirational to you as well. Thanks for listening and have a great week.